Hi, I'm Annie Fitzsimmons. I'm your Washington Realtors Legal Hotline lawyer. Question I've been receiving from listing brokers is, what do I do when the seller has offered 5 apples compensation and buyer requests 8 apples compensation and seller says, I'm not paying 8 apples compensation, I'm only paying 5 apples. First, I want to call out how absolutely critically important it is, listing brokers, for you to pay attention to 17B, the paragraph 17B in Form 21. We've spent numerous videos already talking to buyer brokers about the importance of completing paragraph 17B of Form 21. Listing brokers, remember, paragraph 17B creates your seller's contractual obligation to pay compensation to the buyer broker. If you aren't paying attention as the listing broker to paragraph 17B, it is entirely possible that your seller is going to sign a purchase and sale agreement obligating themselves to pay more compensation than they intended because you weren't paying attention. So listing brokers, pay attention to paragraph 17B. Every single time you get an offer and you go through the offer review, all of the provisions that are important to the seller, let me say that differently, all of the provisions are important to the seller, including paragraph 17B. So now to the question that's asked. Seller has offered 5 apples compensation. Buyer is seeking 8 apples compensation for buyer broker, and seller says, nope, I'm not paying that. So the first question that listing brokers are asking me is, when the seller responds to the buyer's offer and says, I'm only paying 5 apples compensation, that's what I offered and that's all I'm paying, is that a counteroffer? And the answer is absolutely, that's a counteroffer. Buyer's offer to purchase seller's property includes a term of the purchase and sale agreement obligating seller to pay 8 apples compensation to the buyer broker. Seller says, I'm not willing to accept your offer as drafted. I will accept, if this is true, I will accept all of the terms of your offer except your request to pay 8 apples of compensation to the buyer broker, and I will only pay 5 apples compensation to the buyer broker. In that scenario, that is absolutely a counteroffer, and listing broker, you have to treat it as a counteroffer. And so then the next question I've been getting is, so how do I draft that counteroffer? Well, the answer to the question, rhetorically could be answered, how do you draft any counteroffer, right? You draft this counteroffer in the same way that you would draft any counteroffer. I typically tell brokers that if you're only making a single change to buyer's offer, if in this case the only term you're changing is the buyer broker compensation, and if your firm does not have an office policy prohibiting you from striking a term and interlineating a different term in order to write seller's counteroffer, then you can do that. So if your firm has an office policy that says anytime you write a counteroffer, you must use Form 36 to do so, then you're going to adhere to your office policy and you're going to use a Form 36 to write this seller's counteroffer. If your firm does not have that office policy, and if this is the only term you're countering, then I don't have any problem so long as you can do it legibly, with you striking 8 apples and writing 5 apples beside it on the same space, assuming there's space for that, and then having the seller initial that change. If buyer agrees, buyer can also initial that change, and we know we have mutual acceptance to the purchase and sale agreement. If you're modifying more than just that one term, or if your firm has an office policy that requires you to use a Form 36, then you would want to pull out your Form 36, and in the other section of your Form 36, you would want to create a term that makes it very clear that the buyer brokerage compensation will be 5 apples and not the 8 apples that buyer had requested. So you're going to draft language competently on your Form 36 to modify that term of buyer's offer to create seller's counteroffer. If you have questions on this topic or any other, please send a question to me by visiting warealtor.org. Thank you for being a Washington Realtors member.